Rome won the war, but the queens paid the price of the brutal past. Part 1. The day the Crones fell. History loves victory. It loves marble statues of emperors. It loves bronze helmets, sharp swords, and banners flying in golden light. It loves the word conquered, but it rarely lingers on what conquest meant for the people who lost, especially the women who wore crowns. When Rome won a war, the battlefield wasn't the end of the story. For kings, defeat often meant death. Quick, brutal, final. For queens, it was rarely that simple. Because Rome didn't just defeat enemies. Rome displayed them. Rome transformed them. Rome turned their humiliation into a public lesson. And if you were a woman who once ruled a kingdom, defeat did not just strip your land. It stripped your identity. Let me take you there. Imagine the dust of a collapsed city still hanging in the air, smoke rising from burned towers, Roman soldiers moving through streets that, just days earlier, echoed with the voice of a queen giving commands. The war is over. Rome has won. The crown has fallen. But for the queen, the true battle is only beginning. Part 2. When Lao became a weapon. Rome did not rely only on swords. Rome relied on law. Roman citizens had protections, rights, procedures, but those rights stopped at the edge of empire. If you were conquered, truly conquered, something terrifying happened. You ceased to be a person in the legal sense. You became property. It didn't matter if you had once commanded armies. It didn't matter if foreign envoys had bowed before you. It didn't matter if your face had been stamped on coins. Once your city fell, your status collapsed with it. And Roman officials were not confused about this. To them, it was policy. To them, it was order. To the defeated, it was erasure. And this is where queens entered the most dangerous space imaginable. Not powerful enough to execute immediately, but too powerful to ignore. They became symbols, and Rome understood the power of symbols better than anyone. Part 3. The Triumphs. Rome's greatest strategy. When a Roman general returned from conquest, he did not simply celebrate. He performed. The triumph was not a parade. It was theater. It was psychological warfare wrapped in ceremony. The procession moved slowly through Rome. Crowds packed the streets. Children sat on fathers' shoulders. Vendors shouted. Musicians played. First came treasures from conquered lands. Gold, statues, paintings of defeated cities. Then came exotic animals, lions, leopards, creatures Romans had never seen before. But everyone knew what they were waiting for. The rulers, the kings, the queens. And here was Rome's cruel genius. They did not strip these captives of their royal garments. They dressed them in them. Full regalia. Jewels glittering in the sun. Silk catching the wind. And then they added chains. Heavy chains. The contrast was deliberate. Look, Rome was saying. Look at this queen who once ruled thousands. Look at her now, walking slowly, surrounded by guards, crowds jeering. It was not enough to win. Rome needed the world to see that it had won. Humiliation became spectacle. Suffering became lesson. And for a queen, every step of that march was a reminder. Her power had not just ended. It had been inverted. Part 4. Zenobia. The Golden Chains. Zenobia of Palmyra was no ordinary ruler. She expanded her kingdom across Egypt and deep into the eastern provinces. She challenged Rome directly. She claimed descent from Cleopatra. She carried herself not as a regional leader, but as an empress. For a moment, she made Rome uneasy. That alone made her dangerous. When Emperor Aurelian crushed her rebellion, she tried to flee east. She was captured, and Rome prepared its stage. 2 years later, during Aurelian's triumph, Zenobia walked through Rome. Witnesses describe her adorned in jewels so bright they reflected sunlight like flame. But what people remembered most were the chains. Golden chains, not iron. Gold, so heavy that attendants reportedly had to help support their weight. Think about that symbolism. The wealth she once commanded, the riches of her kingdom, transformed into the instrument of her captivity. Rome did not simply bind her. Rome turned her glory against her. And yet, something remarkable happened. Zenobia did not break. Sources suggest she walked with composure, dignity intact, head high. Perhaps that saved her. Instead of execution, she was spared. Given a villa near Rome, allowed to live. Some say she married into Roman aristocracy. But was this mercy? Or was it a subtler humiliation? To live, not as a ruler, but as a living reminder of Rome's supremacy. To breathe under the shadow of the empire that crushed you. Sometimes survival is not freedom. Sometimes it is permanent defeat. Part 5. Boudica. When humiliation, back. If Zenobia represents calculated survival, Boudica represents rage. When her husband, king of a British tribe, died, he attempted compromise. He divided his kingdom between his daughters and the Roman emperor. Rome ignored the will. Officials seized property, annexed land, stripped authority. When Boudica protested, she was publicly beaten, whipped, not in secret, not quietly, publicly. Her daughters were assaulted. The violence was not random. It was strategic. It was a message. This is what happens when you challenge imperial authority. But Rome miscalculated. Humiliation can break people, but sometimes it ignites them. Boudica rose. She gathered tribes, destroyed Roman settlements, burned Londinium to the ground. For a moment, Rome trembled. Her rebellion was eventually crushed. And knowing what triumph would mean, knowing she would be paraded, chained, displayed, she chose poison. She denied Rome its spectacle. She denied them the theater. Her daughters disappear from the record. History swallows them. No triumph, no villa, no second act, only silence. Part 6. The prison below, the celebration. While crowds celebrated triumphs above, another reality waited below. The Mamertine prison. Cold stone, dark chambers, a lower cell accessible only through a hole in the ceiling. Condemned captives were lowered into darkness. Not all queens were executed, but many kings were. Starvation, strangulation, isolation, while Rome cheered above. That contrast defines empire. Above ground, music, celebration, incense. Below, fear, filth, final breaths. Rome understood that power is most effective when public glory and private brutality coexist. The message was clear. Submit, or become spectacle. Part 7. What this really meant. It is tempting to view these stories as isolated cruelty. But they were not accidents. They were system. Rome's legal protections applied to citizens, but conquest erased citizenship. Once conquered, your rights dissolved. Dignity was conditional. Humanity negotiable. For queens, the fall was steeper, because they were not merely defeated leaders. They were symbols of sovereignty, and Rome did not tolerate rival symbols, so it repurposed them, turned crowns into props, turned jewels into chains, turned bodies into warnings. And it worked. For centuries, allies stayed loyal, enemies hesitated, because everyone knew what triumph meant. It meant more than loss. It meant public erasure. Part 8. The human cost. Behind every triumph was a woman who once gave orders, who once sat in councils, who once signed decrees, who once commanded loyalty. And then, she walked in chains. Imagine that transition. From throne room to parade route, from command to silence, from power to performance. History often reduces these queens to footnotes. But they were flesh and blood. They felt fear, humiliation, rage, resignation. Some adapted, some resisted, some vanished into obscurity, some became legends, but none escaped the cost of Rome's victory unchanged. Part 9. Why these still matters. It would be easy to say, that was ancient, that was brutal, that was different. But what these stories reveal is not just Roman cruelty. They reveal how power operates when unchecked. How law can protect some and erase others. How spectacle can normalize humiliation. How systems can turn individuals into warnings. The triumph was Rome's greatest invention. Not because of the parade, but because of the message. Power does not only defeat, it displays. And when power displays humiliation publicly, it shapes behavior privately. The fear of becoming the next spectacle can keep entire regions obedient. That is the real legacy. Part 10. Rome won. Rome won battles. Rome expanded borders, built roads, constructed aqueducts, left monuments. But beneath the marble and engineering marvels lies a quieter truth. Queens paid the price. Their suffering reinforced imperial authority. Their humiliation stabilized dominance. Their stories became cautionary tales whispered across kingdoms. Rome won the war. But victory, in Rome's hands, was never clean. It was choreographed, legalized, public, and unforgettable. When you walk through Rome today, when you see the Capitoline Hill, when you stand near the ancient prison walls, remember this. For every statue of a victorious emperor, there was once a queen, walking slowly beneath the sun, crown still on her head, chains cutting into her skin, while the world watched. That is the part textbooks rarely linger on. That is the cost of empire. And that is the brutal past.